In her new World War II novel, The Golden Doves, author Martha Hall Kelly returns to Ravensbruck, the Nazi concentration camp that inflicted unspeakable horrors on the women who inspired Kelly's first novel, the breakout hit Lilac Girls. Hi, it's Brenda with HEC Books, where we discuss books with the authors who write them. If you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe for more great content like this. Now, let's meet Martha Hall Kelly to talk about the true events and heroic women behind her new novel, The Golden Doves. Martha Hall Kelly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I know, we're so excited to have you here.
So great to be here.
So this all started with Lilac Girls, but it's wound its way back. Your two books after Lilac Girls sort of went deeper into the history of Caroline Faraday, your heroine of Lilac Girls, to her family and her family history. And now, in this case, you are going forward, back to World War II, but then forward into the next generation almost.
Right. When I was researching Lilac Girls, that book took me 10 years to write, and I went to Ravensbruck twice. I had so many things that I couldn't put in Lilac Girls that I kept kind of squirreling them away for when I wrote another World War II book. And things about Ravensbruck, things about, how Nazis escaped, fugitive Nazis. There was so much that I kind of tucked away to put in this book.
Who are the Golden Doves?
Well, they are, if you look at the cover of the book, there's Arlette, who is half German and half French, and Josie. She's an American, half Jewish. And Josie and her mother and grandmother end up in Paris, occupied Paris, stranded when her father, who's a diplomat, leaves the country and he can't get back in without getting caught by the Gestapo. They're using this little family as the women as kind of bait. And so Josie is stuck in occupied Paris, this American girl, and without telling you too many spoilers, she starts becoming a radio operator, which was really, really dangerous. And
she ends up getting recruited.
She does, yes. She gets recruited. And, it was such a dangerous thing, and so many radio operators, the adult ones, had been kind of picked off by the Gestapo because they were really good at finding them. They had all sorts of technology to track them down. So they turned to a lot of the younger people in Paris. And, kind of by default, Josie ends up being a radio operator. And she meets up with Arlette, this half German, half French girl who grew up in Alsace, which of course is on the border of France and Germany. And in some ways she identifies as German. She was in the BDM, which is the female wing of the Hitler Youth, and she has a baby with a Wehrmacht soldier, and out of wedlock, and has the baby in a Lebensborn home, which is what they did in Nazi Germany. But she eventually ends up with Josie as in Paris as a radio operator, and they became known as the Golden Doves. And they outwit the Gestapo at every turn, and there's a price on their head.
So the story starts with the French resistance, but it takes so many turns from there into the aftermath of the war as well.
Yes. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that they end up at Ravensbruck. I can't say why, because that would be a spoiler, but they do end up there, and sadly, terrible things happen to Josie's mother, and at the hands of a terrible doctor named Dr. Snow. And also, Arlette, her son, is taken at the camp. And so they emerge from Ravensbruck very wounded and with a vendetta of sorts to find this Dr. Snow.
You mentioned, too, that you had this thing you wanted to really go deeper into, and that had to do with the children of the war and the tragedy.
When I went to Ravensbruck, I met several grown adults that had been born at the camp. And I thought that was so interesting. How did they survive? So many of them didn't. And I just thought that was really interesting. There was also a special block where the Nazis allowed women who were pregnant, they arrived at the camp pregnant, and they allowed them to have their babies at the camp because they found that women whose babies were taken away from them became non-productive workers. So they had a selfish motive, but they wanted to do this experiment to see if they could have more productive workers.
One of the really fascinating things about the resistance movement, too, it was a way for women, especially young women, to participate in the resistance against the war. And the courage that you see and the moments and the way that they're tested in your story really shows that.
I loved writing those parts. I was really inspired by the book A Woman of No Importance. It's about Virginia Hall. No relation, sadly, because, she's my hero. But she was a spy for the British, SOE, and she was unbelievable. She was so dedicated, and she only had one leg. I mean, she did it all with, a wooden leg. And she would dress up, and she talk about outwitting the Gestapo. She was unbelievable. And the whole time, she was operating a radio, which was so dangerous.
When the story opens, tell us what Josie is doing and what she's trying to reveal to us about the realities of what happened after.
Well, she's wounded in the same way that Arlette is after losing her son, but Josie has lost her mother, and she feels like was responsible for her mother being at the camp to begin with. And she, day to day, is just a peon and does kind of the grunt work. The book opens when she goes on Fort Bliss to just a house where this German family is staying.
And what's Josie working at now? She's
in Army intelligence, yeah, and just kind of a low-level worker, but she's really, really smart and has been through a lot. And she doesn't kind of take it well that these Germans are there, just kind of, as she says, having barbecue and bourbon by the pool, talking about how handsome Hitler was.
And spell it out for us too. What is going on? In that after the Nuremberg trials, everyone thought, well, everybody got their punishment, right? And justice was served, but that's not what happened.
So not right. Yes. Well,
tell us what really did happen.
It was a chaotic time then. There were so many Nazis, and it was hard for the U.S. government to kind of vet everybody and figure out, who should be punished, who should be in jail. And at that point, they were even letting, Bonn was putting a lot of pressure on the United States to let everybody out of jail. They were making all sorts of deals because the Soviets wanted those scientists really badly.
There was an arms race going on, and suddenly these war criminals became like hot properties.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's unsavory stuff. Yeah. And now a lot of the CIA classified documents are becoming declassified. So if you go to CIA.gov and you type in any of this, it all comes up. And I use that a lot in my research. So it isn't my opinion, any of this. It's CIA documents. But the Cold War was really ramping up at that point. And the Joint Chiefs under Truman said, do whatever you have to do to get all those German scientists. 1,000 of them came over. And a lot of times, they didn't have that much knowledge to give the program, but they figured better we get them than the Soviets do, just in case. So they brought so many men over and their whole families that really had been complicit in a lot of crimes.
And Josie makes it clear that she's disgusted by all of this, and yet it's the reality of what the world is post-war now.
Absolutely, and it's also a very male-dominated place. She's one of the few women even on the Army base. And when she tries to complain about it, she's poo-pooed. But finally they come to her and say, hey, we actually would like to find Dr. Snow. How about you go out and take a shot at it?
And on the other side of the world, Arlette is trying to rebuild her life, and she ends up unwittingly getting pulled into this crazy situation of the search for this doctor who has not been brought to justice.
Yes. She comes at it through a different way, through her son. And she's in Paris, wounded, and, a lot of charlatans approached people after the war and kind of took advantage of them and said, oh, I can help you find your loved one. And she's been through that. She's lost everything. She has no money. And this man comes into the cafe where she works. And that's her little family. They're Ravensbruck survivors. And he comes in and says, I may know where your son is. And she has to make the decision, do I go with him?
Some of these plot lines sound so crazy that they couldn't be true, and yet everything you do is rooted in fact.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. It really, truth is stranger than fiction. Oh, absolutely, when it comes to this period in time.
Thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more like it. Stay tuned for the second part of our interview with Martha Hall Kelly, where she talks about the Nazi rat lines that helped German scientists escape justice.